Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Aisha, and I'll be presenting on a topic that plays a major role not only in English classes but in almost every form of communication we experience, and that is narrative writing. Narratives are not just stories we read in books. They are part of how we think, how we explain ideas, and how we share experiences with others. Today, I'll walk you through the essential elements of narrative writing, the structure that makes a story effective, and techniques that can help strengthen any narrative, whether it's fictional, personal, or academic. By the end of this presentation, my goal is for you to feel confident in understanding how narratives work and how to use storytelling to communicate meaning clearly and memorably. So let's begin with the big picture. What does it mean to write a narrative? Narrative writing is more than just saying this happened and that and the third. A narrative is a structured form of storytelling designed to guide the reader through a meaningful experience. It uses events, emotions, and descriptions to take readers on a journey from beginning to end. Narratives help readers understand why something matters. They connect facts with feelings, information with experience, and events with meaning. Think about the last time someone told you a story. Maybe a friend sharing something funny that happened, or a teacher explaining an important moment from history. Chances are you remembered the story more clearly than if they had simply given you a list of facts. That's the power of narrative. It makes information memorable because it engages us emotionally and intellectually. So, what is narration? Narration is the act of telling a story in a logical sequence. This sequence almost always includes characters, so who the story centers on, setting, time and place of events, plot, events linked in a clear sequence, the conflict, the challenge driving the story, and the resolution, how the conflict concludes. But narration also answers deeper questions like why did this happen? What does it mean? How did it affect the people involved? Narration is not only about what happened, it's about why it matters. When we understand the meaning behind events, the story becomes more powerful. Think about movies or novels you love. What makes them memorable is not only the events, but the emotional and messages behind those events. Narration gives us a way to share that depth with others. There are several types of narration, each with its own strength. So, first person. This uses I or we. It creates intimacy and closeness. We feel like we're inside the narrator's mind, experiencing events from their personal viewpoint. Then we have third person limited. The narrator focuses on one character's thoughts and feelings. We follow that person closely, but the narrator is still outside the story. Then, third person omniscient. This narrator knows everything and anything, every character's thoughts, all events, even background information. It creates a wide and flexible net and perspective. Lastly, we have objective narration. Here, the narrator reports events without describing inner thoughts, almost like a camera recording what happens. Choosing the type of narration depends on the purpose of the story you're trying to portray. If you want emotional closeness, if you want complexity and depth, omniscient narration works well. If you want neutrality, objective narration is best. Let's go now to the structure of a narrative So starting with the introduction, we have that the introduction is your first impression. It sets in the tone, mood, and atmosphere of the story. This is where you introduce the main character of the story, the setting, and any background information the reader needs. Okay, so a strong introduction also creates curiosity. It gives the reader a reason to keep reading. It might be a hint of conflict, a mysterious detail, or a strong image that grabs attention. For example, instead of starting with, "Last year I went to the beach," you might start with, "I never expected a simple trip to the beach to change the way I think about courage." The second introduction creates curiosity. It makes the reader ask what happened. After the introduction, we have rising action, which in the longest and most detailed part of the narrative. This is where the main conflict becomes clear. Tension grows, relationships develop, and events become more significant. So the rising action is essential because it builds interest and emotional investment. If nothing challenges the characters, the story will feel flat. Consider a story where a character wants to achieve a goal, maybe winning a competition, repairing a friendship, or overcoming a fear. The rising action includes all the obstacles that stand in their way. These moments create suspense and keep the reader engaged. Good rising action balances description, dialogue, action, and character thoughts. Together, these elements deepen the reader's understanding of the story. At the peak of the rising action comes the climax, the most intense and decisive moment in the story. It is the turning point that changes everything, the emotional or dramatic peak of the story. So it's where the main conflict reaches maximum tension, something major shifts or is revealed. This might be a confrontation between characters, a moment of personal realization, a discovery, a dramatic event, or an important decision. The climax should feel like the emotional peak of the story. It's the moment the reader has been waiting for, and it usually determines the outcome of the entire narrative. Now, after the climax, things begin to settle during the falling action. Finally, the narrative ends with the resolution. Okay, so here the conflict is fully resolved. Characters may grow, change, or learn something meaningful. The reader should feel a sense of closure, like the story has come full circle. Resolutions can be happy, tragic, uncertain, and open ended. What matters most is that the resolution makes sense based on the events and themes of the story. Okay, so how do we make narratives stronger? Use vivid sensory details. Instead of saying the room was messy, describe the smell of old papers, the clothes scattered across the floor, the sunlight highlighting dust in the air, and details make sense and scenes come alive. Keep events in logical order. Readers should always feel oriented. If you use flashbacks or, let's say, time jumps, make sure they're closer and clearer. Highlight emotions and reactions. Events alone don't create connection. Emotional response does. Maintain consistent point of view. Don't switch randomly from I to he or she unless your structure demands it. And you should also give the story a meaningful takeaway. Even fictional stories are remembered because of the message they communicate. These techniques turn simple events into powerful storytelling. And a narrative essay is slightly different from a fictional story. It mixes storytelling with reflection. It focuses on a theme or a lesson, using real or personal experiences to express it. In a narrative essay, you are both the storyteller and the interpreter. You share an experience, but you also explain its meaning. For example, a narrative essay might describe a moment of failure, but the real takeaway might be about resilience, maturity, or personal growth. Okay, so when writing a narrative essay, you should start strong. Use a hook that pulls the reader in. Build the story and use the narrative structure: introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and the resolution. You should also keep the language vivid but clear. You don't need fancy vocabulary. What matters is clarity and emotional detail. You should end with reflection. Explain what you learned, how you changed, or why the experience matters to the reader. The reflection is what transforms your story from a simple memory into a meaningful essay. All in all, why does narration matter? Narration helps us understand our experiences. It organizes events and gives them meaning. It also makes communication more engaging, so people can remember stories more than facts. Narration is useful everywhere: in academic writing, in professional presentations, in personal communication, in creative projects, as well as in advertising and marketing, and in historical explanation. Whenever you want to make an idea stick, framing it as a narrative makes it more effective. Okay, before I end, I want to bring everything back together for a moment. Throughout this presentation, we looked at what narrative writing is, how it works, and why it plays such a big role in the way we communicate. Narration isn't only a technique used in literature, it's something we use every day without thinking about it. When we explain an event, when we try to make someone understand our point, or when we connect ideas to real experiences, we are using narrative thinking. Understanding the structure of a narrative helps us express ourselves with more clarity. When we know how to build an introduction that pulls people in, how to develop rising action that builds interest, how to shape a climax that carries weight, and how to close with a resolution that feels earned, we communicate with more purpose. And these steps are not formulas, they are tools. They help us take raw experiences or ideas and turn them into something meaningful. Narrative writing also pushes us to reflect. It asks us to think about why events matter and what they reveal about us or the world around us. Whether you're writing a personal essay, telling a story, explaining a concept, or presenting an argument, the ability to shape a narrative strengthens your message. People may forget details, but they remember how a story made them feel and what they understood because of it. So, as you continue to write and communicate, try to pay attention to the stories you tell, the stories you hear, and the stories hidden inside everyday experiences. They all have structure, they all have purpose, and the more comfortable you become with narrative tools, the more confident and effective your communication is and will be. So, thank you for listening. If anyone would like clarification, extra examples, or help building a narrative structure for a specific assignment, I'm happy to answer your questions down below in the comments. Thank you so much again, and have a good day. Bye bye.